All right, good morning. Let's go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for joining me this morning. Today, we are going to talk about Social Security disability for depression. Before we get started, a little bit of introduction. This webinar should not be construed as legal advice. It is just a broad overview of the Social Security disability process as it relates to depression claims. I do ask that if you're attending live, to not submit any questions in the chat that might contain any protected health information. I did put in the chat a link to schedule a consultation if you'd like to do that. If you are watching on the replay, that link is down below. Please don't put any protected health information in the comments. As much as I love to interact and chat, it's not the time and place. I don't want you to put any of your protected or private information out there. So with that being said, we will first kind of talk about some Social Security disability basics, and then we will move into some guidance from Social Security on depression claims, talk about the potential listing 12.04, some considerations, and then finally, as I close out all the webinars, with how an attorney can help you with your Social Security disability claim. A little bit about me. My name is Kaitlin Wildoner. I am the founding attorney of Beacon Disability, which is a law firm based in Florida. We exclusively practice federal administrative law, and we assist clients throughout the United States at their agency level SSDI and SSI matters. If you have a situation that we cannot help with, we do try to connect you with somebody who can. I'm happy to answer any questions at any time, so please feel free to reach out. Contact information will be the last slide on the webinar. Email, give us a call, or you can use the link that I put in the chat or the link that will be below on the replay and schedule a consultation with us to chat. Okay, so getting into Social Security disability basics. There are two different Social Security disability programs. There's Social Security Disability Insurance, or SSDI benefits, and then there's Supplemental Security Income, or SSI benefits. Both programs require that you be disabled and unable to work for a period of at least 12 months. That 12 months does not have to pass before you actually apply for disability benefits, but if you have not already been disabled and unable to work for 12 months, Social Security is going to want to see medical records that indicate that it's likely that you will remain disabled and unable to work for at least 12 months. When it comes to the difference between the programs, SSDI benefits are based on what you have paid into the system. And so because of that, the additional prong in SSDI claims is not just that you're disabled and unable to work for at least 12 months, but that you have a work history, that you have sufficient work credits. Generally speaking, that means that you have to have worked 5 of the last 10 years. Now, you can, of course, work less than that if you either were a high earner or if you are a younger individual. But generally speaking, that kind of tends to be our rule is, have you worked 5 of the last 10 years? If so, then you should have sufficient work credits. If not, then you might, if you are either a younger individual and or a higher earner for those 5 years, and you might have worked part-time or something. But that's generally, we like to say you have to have worked 5 of the last 10 years to qualify for SSDI benefits. When it comes to SSI benefits, you still have to be disabled and unable to work for 12 months, but instead of the work history requirement, what you have is income and asset restrictions. There are income restrictions on SSI claims, and then asset restrictions. You cannot have more than $2,000 in assets if you're single, and more than $3,000 in assets if you are married. And that does not include one home and one car, but it does include anything beyond that. If you're married, you have a car and your spouse has a car. That's 2 cars. That second car is going to count towards the asset restrictions. If you have additional property other than the home that you live in, that counts towards the asset restrictions. And then, of course, things like bank accounts, investment accounts, retirement accounts count towards those asset restrictions. Once you have submitted your application for either SSDI or SSI benefits, your case will begin to work through the 5-step evaluation process. Once you get that file submitted, Social Security receives it, and they say, okay, are you currently engaging in substantial gainful activity? That means they're looking to see, are you currently working more than 20 hours a week, or earning in 2022 more than $1,350 a month. Just recently, Social Security did announce that SGA amount, which is that $1,350 a month, will be going up to $1,470 a month as of January 1st, 2023. But for right now in 2022, you cannot be found disabled by their definition if you are either working more than 20 hours a week or earning more than $1,350 a month in gross earnings. So that's before taxes, before any health insurance, before anything is taken out, gross earnings of $1,350 a month. For self-employment, things change a little bit, but that tends to be the rule of thumb that most people fall into. If you are not engaging in substantial gainful activity, Social Security moves to step 2, and they start looking at your medical records and they see, do you have at least one severe medically determinable impairment? If you do have at least one severe medically determinable impairment, the case moves to step 3. If you do not have at least one severe medically determinable impairment, the case evaluation stops at step 2. Social Security will find that you are not disabled according to their rules. If you have at least one severe medically determinable impairment, your case moves to step 3. And at that case, at that stage, Social Security is looking for, do you meet or equal one of their Blue Book listings? And with respect to depression, we'll talk about in a minute, it's listing 12.04. There are other mental health listings as well as many physical related impairment listings. So they're looking, do you meet or equal a listing? If you do meet or equal a listing, your case evaluation will stop there and you will get a notice of approval. You will receive your notice of award and your benefits will be turned on. If you do not meet or equal a listing, Social Security moves to step 4, and in doing so, they create a residual functional capacity for you. That's based on the medical records. And it's basically what Social Security thinks you are capable of doing as it relates to your conditions. How long can you sit, stand, walk? How much weight can you lift or carry? So when they're creating that RFC, they're using your medical records. And they use that RFC based on your medical records to determine, can you go back to your past relevant work, which is work that you've performed at substantial gainful activity levels in the last 15 years. If you can go back to one of your past jobs in the last 15 years, then you are found not disabled. The case evaluation stops there. Social Security says you're not disabled because you can go back to this work. If you cannot return to any of your past relevant work, your case moves to step 5, where Social Security reviews to see, okay, can you engage in any other work? Are there any other jobs in the national economy that exist that you can do? And so to do that, they do take into account your age, education, work experience, and your past relevant work with any skills you may have obtained from that. If you can, I don't know if I've already said this, if you can engage in other work, you are found not disabled. If there are other jobs that you can do that exist in the national economy, you're not disabled, you'll get your denial letter. If you cannot engage in your past work or any other work, then that will often result in a finding of disabled. You would get your notice of award and your monthly benefits would be turned on. Okay, getting into specifically talking about claims for depression. The listing that we're about to talk about, the listing that covers depression claims, also includes bipolar and related disorders. And the reason why they kind of combine them is because those disorders are characterized by an irritable, depressed, elevated, or expansive mood, or by a loss of interest or pleasure in doing almost all activities, leading to a clinically significant decline in your functioning. And as you can see before, some of the signs and symptoms of the depression and bipolar related disorders might include feelings of hopelessness or guilt, some suicidal ideation, whether there's a clinically significant change in your body weight or your appetite, if you have some sleep disturbances, either an increase or a decrease in your energy, and decrease in your psychomotor abnormalities, if you've got difficulty concentrating, pressured speech, if you've got ideas of grandiosity, any kind of reduced impulse control, sadness or euphoria, and social withdrawal. So as you can see, that kind of runs the gamut. And part of that is because bipolar disorder is included in this listing. And there are several different types of bipolar disorder, as there are depressive disorders. So it is important to note that this really, there's a wide range. And trauma and stressor-related disorders such as PTSD, anxiety-related disorders are all evaluated under different listings with different qualifications. So the listings today do not relate to PTSD, they do not relate to anxiety, they just focus on depression, bipolar, and related disorders. As I think I mentioned previously, and if I haven't and you've watched any of the videos before, you know how important medical records are in your disability claim. With respect to mental health records, they can be very difficult. And part of that is because there's no such thing as an X-ray or an MRI that can show what's going on with your mental health. It is more subjective, and it is hard to have objective findings as they relate to mental health. They do somewhat exist, but they are difficult to get. And so here you will see what type of records Social Security is looking at as it relates to your claim. Specifically, they are going to want obviously your reported symptoms. What are you going through? What are you telling your doctors and medical professionals about as it relates to your depression? They'll want to see the whole history of the medical records. As you'll see in the listing, longitudinal records can be important. If you've got a 2-year period of inability to function outside of a structured support environment, that's important, and Social Security needs to know that. Of course, if you've got any kind of testing, there is sometimes imaging that is helpful as it relates to mental health claims. So that is also relevant. Any other lab findings, diagnoses, medications, therapy that's received, all of that and everything else that's included in here is relevant, should be in the medical records, and Social Security will consider it when reviewing your claim. Here is listing 1204. There's 2 different pathways to meeting or equaling the listing, and one is by meeting A and B, and the other is by meeting A and C. So here is A and B. A is the same in both, and as you can see, there's kind of one path to go for depressive disorder and the other path to go for bipolar disorder. With respect to the depressive disorder, that will be characterized via medical documentation by 5 or more of the following: depressed mood, diminished interest in almost all activities, appetite disturbance with change in weight, either up or down, sleep disturbance, observable psychomotor agitation or retardation, decreased energy, feelings of guilt or worthlessness, difficulty concentrating or thinking, or thoughts of death or suicide. So 5 or more of those documented in the medical records can help to prove the depressive disorder. When it comes to bipolar disorder, they've got to see medical documentation of at least 3 of these: pressured speech, flight of ideas, inflated self-esteem, decreased need for sleep, distractibility, involvement in activities that have a high probability of painful consequences that are not recognized, or an increase in goal-directed activity or psychomotor agitation. So you can meet A1 or A2 as well, in addition to having B, an extreme limitation of 1 or marked limitation of 2 of the following areas of mental functioning: either your ability to understand, remember, or apply information, your ability to interact with others, your ability to concentrate, persist, or maintain pace, or your ability to adapt or manage oneself. Okay, so you'll see there's 1204A1, which you would have to meet A1 and B, or A2 and B in order to meet these. If you are looking to meet A and C, as you can see, A is the same. You still have that one path towards depressive disorder, the other path towards bipolar disorder. And then there's C, which is your mental disorder is serious and persistent, meaning that you have a medically documented history of the existence of the disorder over at least 2 years. And you have medical evidence of ongoing medical treatment, mental health therapy, psychosocial support, or a highly structured setting that is ongoing and that diminishes the signs and symptoms of your mental disorder, and a marginal adjustment, meaning minimal capacity to adapt to changes in your environment or to demands that are not already part of your daily life. So you've got A and B or A and C, okay? Certain considerations to think of when you've got an open disability application for depression. As I've mentioned, medical records are paramount. They are key. And the issue in Social Security cases is not just can you go back to your past work, but can you perform any job that exists in the national economy? If you are age 50 or older, the grid rules might apply. And this is particularly relevant if you have physical impairments in addition to your depression. I will usually tell my clients it doesn't matter what you have going on, whether it's the physical or the mental, that's kind of most important to you. If you have additional impairments, whether it's you're primarily going for depression, but you've also got physical, or you're primarily going for physical and you notice that the depression starts to set in, you want to tell Social Security about everything because they look at the whole person. They evaluate your ability as a person to do work, your ability as a person to function on a daily basis. So it's important that, I hear from potential clients often, well, I didn't even apply for disability for depression. Why are they trying to reach out to my therapist and figure out, well, that might not be the primary thing, but it's a component of your claim. So it's important that medical records are key. And we'll talk about that again in a minute. Functional capacity can also be relevant, again, particularly if you have physical impairments in addition to your depression. And that's why it all comes together. Social Security is looking at you as a whole person. They are not looking at you as just a depressed individual. They are not looking at you as just an individual with a back condition. They are looking at you as a whole person with your back condition and with the depression coming together to see what limitations do you have in your ability to function on a daily basis as a result of both the back condition and the depression. Objective medical records will be important. And as I note, they are tough to get in mental health cases. It's important to have a treating provider who understands what you're going through and who can properly document the file, connecting it back to your depression. And I did not include it in here, but sometimes it is tough mental health records are often, they have different rules that apply to them and their privacy because it's so deeply personal. And so it's important that if you are applying for disability for depression, anxiety, PTSD, bipolar disorder, anything mental health related, that you do let your psychologist, psychiatrist, counselor, therapist know, because what they might need to do is they might kind of need to keep two different records. One that is very locked down and very private, and then another that they can release to Social Security. And sometimes what I see, especially with therapists, is they will write a letter. When Social Security sends them their record request, they will write a letter and say, I've been seeing Mr. Smith since January 3rd, 2021. We see each other every 2 weeks for a 30-minute long appointment. Here are some of the things that we have discussed. Here are some of the limitations that he has. And they just kind of summarize basically what they've been seeing, as opposed to releasing their notes from every single visit. And some counselors can release those notes. It depends, I think, on the individual counselor, doctor, or therapist, as well as the practice rules, the state's rules, and what Social Security is looking for. So just be sure if you are treating for mental health, just let that provider know that you also have an open disability claim and that you might need their help on that, so that way Social Security can understand what you are going through from a mental health perspective. Okay. All right, so finally, how can an attorney help you? There's a lot that we can do. This is not an exhaustive list. This is just kind of a summary on some of the things that I find we do most often. We can provide guidance on what correspondence from Social Security actually means. If you have already hired us, we are already working together and you receive a denial, or if you contact us or any other law firm within a certain time frame after your denial, we can sometimes help you file the necessary appeals. If you call us with 24 hours to go before the deadline, that might not be an appeal that we can take on immediately. We might ask for you to file it and then kind of go through our process with you there. But we can file necessary appeals. We review your medical records and your case file for several reasons. One of them being we can discuss with you what additional records might be helpful in your case. We can also review your documents for accuracy and completeness and discuss what Social Security is looking for in their requested forms. We do not fill out the forms for you, and that is because I like to refer to the forms that Social Security sends as kind of testimony without having to go before a judge. It's your opportunity to explain to Social Security what all the medical records actually mean. Okay. We can look at x-rays and MRIs and CT reports all day long. We can look at your pain management records. We can look at your therapist notes. We can look at your medication management notes. What does all of that actually mean to your day-to-day? What are your limitations? What do you have difficulty doing? What can you still do? That's what we can help with on that. We work with you to provide relevant updates to Social Security throughout your claim, and then we provide updates back down the line if we hear from Social Security a relevant update. Oftentimes, Social Security communicates through the mail, so you and I often receive letters at about the same time, usually within a day or two of each other. But it kind of helps because we are a backstop. We make sure that, hey, have you received this form? If not, here's a copy. We also, if you are at the hearing stage, we prepare you and any potential witnesses for the hearing before an administrative law judge, and we question you and any witnesses during that hearing. Not all hearings need a witness. Not all hearings will have a witness. But if that is important and relevant in your specific situation, that's something that we do assist with. And then finally, as promised, here is our contact information. If you have any questions as it relates to Social Security disability claims for depression or any mental health claim or physical claim, feel free to reach out via telephone, send us an email. We will also, once again, put the link to schedule a consultation in the chat. And if you are watching the replay, the link to schedule a consultation is down below. Feel free to reach out. Happy to answer any questions. If we can't help, we do try to point you in the direction of somebody who can. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for watching. Have a wonderful day.